Today's date is September 8th, 2016. This is Yalak, and I've got part 2 of The Real Moses. And I want to take a look some more at what was happening in the life of Moses. Sometimes we think that we're the only ones going through what we're going through. And I know there's a nation part of our captivity where we're suffering on the bottom. And, like Psalm 83, different nations came against us and so on, right? And we're in this spot today for transgressions and we're just in captivity and so on. But underneath or alongside the whole problem issue of our nation being spread about in captivity and the sufferings that our people go through collectively as a nation, wherever we are, there's also this personal kind of feeling where sometimes some of us enter into more difficulties than others of us. And even in our captivity, some do better than others. And it's a real problem when you've learned of your identity and you're returning to the Most High. And you're like bewildered. It's like, okay, I'm making every effort to keep the holy days as he or she over there. And what's going on with my life? I'm fellowshipping with my brethren. I'm learning the commandments. I'm keeping the law. Every time I learn something new, I try to incorporate it into my life, into my mind. And, my heart is toward the Most High. What is going on? Why is it that my life, not only is it not getting better like others, but it's actually getting worse? It's one thing if you can say your things aren't getting better, but your struggles are just like, on a flat kind of level and you're just moving along, but it's not really getting better, but it's not getting worse. You just, still praying, I want this thing to change. I want this thing to change. But then it's another thing when you're dealing with a situation where you're going downhill and you're going so surely downhill that it doesn't matter that you're going down fast or slow, because both are just terrible. You're slipping down fast, it's real slippery, it's wet and muddy and slidey. There's hardly anything good enough to hold on to. You grab something, but it's so weak that you gotta let it go or it's gonna break on you, and you gotta let it go and try to grab something that's stronger. And everything you hold is just like slipping, right? And you realize, man, I'm gonna fall real fast if I let go of this or that. It's terrifying, but it's just as terrifying when you're falling. And no matter what you try to grab onto, no matter what changes you make in your life, and you have made as many as you could have for the years gone by, but you're still slipping, and this time you're slipping so slow, and it's like the sheer terror and fear of death is just all over your mind. Because you aren't hitting the bottom real fast, but it's guaranteed to happen if things don't change, because you're slipping real slow and you have all the time in the world to wallow in the slippery mud and to try to think. You have the time, because you're not slipping fast, to think, should I grab this one over there or try that one over there? And all kinds of time and thought is just at your disposal. And it's like, it's crippling to the mind when you are guaranteed to go down to the bottom, but you're doing it in a terrifyingly slow manner. That is an oppression itself to the mind. And so you are oppressed psychologically, even though you've got oppression physically, right? You're debilitated. You are just stressed on every angle. You're pressured in every way possible that you can think of. And there's just no way that you can just really, find a way to change what is going on. Sometimes we feel like we're just the only ones. But I just want to show you in another way that the people in the Bible, and in this case Moses that I'll be looking at, as I started out mentioning in part one, that he had some difficulties that he had to face as well too. If you look at the different people in the Bible, sometimes they really did go through things. We read the whole of their life story because they're dead and gone now, and we just see they struggle a little bit, but sometimes we pass so quickly over the difficulties in their lives because we can read the end of their story and see that they made it to victory, and mighty blessings of the Most High came into their lives, and they became rich after. Job suffered for whatever length of time, in however bad it was, and it really was. But we can just quickly turn the page and read that he was blessed greatly and he got another wife and whatever, and all kinds of things restored to him, right? And so we've been going for years and years, and we can read through Job's life easily. But, I read somewhere that they're saying the sufferings of Job, even though it seemed so bad, really only lasted about the span of 6 months. And so right away, that just seems kind of shocking to you. It's like, what? All this stuff we're reading, nearly 40 or so chapters, and only 6 months, and it seemed like this guy was in the throes of pain and defeat for years and years and years. And you're wondering, why is it that a 6-month problem from Job got in the Bible, but I've been going through this for years and can't find any way, gritting my teeth to change this and squeezing my hands? It's like, what is going on here? You look at Joseph being sold into slavery, and we read a story that things change in the end, but it's like, you got to remember that he was there for a long time, about 17 years in prison. So he went through it, right? Or 13 years, however long it was, right? And here now with the life of Moses, if we look in Exodus chapter 2 to consider some of the things in Moses' life, let's look at Exodus chapter 2 and verse 11. Now we know the setting already, that Moses was going to be used of the Most High to deliver the children of Israel from bondage to Egypt under the Pharaoh. Now, chapter 2 and verse 10 of Exodus, it's saying here, and the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So Moses grew up under the care of in hiding as well, from the Pharaoh's daughter. And he became her son, and she called his name Moses, and she said, because I drew him out of the water. So somehow he seems to have been sheltered in some kind of way, an important kind of way, right? But then later in his life, things are just going to change, and sometimes we wonder, how did life actually get like this? I was in a calm, still place, and just one or two little decisions in my life that people normally make. When I made them, it just changed my whole life, and now things have changed, right? And you kind of get some kind of a sense like that Moses grew up under the protection of the Pharaoh's daughter, who was hiding him and growing him different from other children. But eventually one day it just changed. It was just like, whoa, the story is about to change here. Now, verse 11, Exodus 2, verse 11. And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown. All right, so it came to pass, so some time had transpired, and you were just going with your regular day-to-day schedule. You're living life like anybody else, this, that, the other, you're doing whatever. And it just came to pass one day for you that the old things, the security of the past, growing up in your parents' house, or growing up or living in conditions where your job was fine and this and that, or the last town you lived in was much more settled and peaceful kind of life for you. But it just came to pass. One day you found yourself stuck in a different life, where things were just going to really start to happen in your life that would just challenge the life out of you almost. And so when he was grown, that he went unto his brethren, All right. So here now, let's look at this. It says the Hebrew wrote Gadol when he was grown, right? I'm looking at this a little bit different than I read it from as a child in the Christian church. To see that when he was grown doesn't only mean that he was now a man, like an adult, but it also includes here to become great and to be magnified, right? So you have to factor in that growing up under the Pharaoh's care, like if you were always around someone that was deeply close to your family and you grew up under their care and so on, right? And they had some status, some really big status in society or in a large, well-to-do company, let's say some Fortune 500 company or so, eventually you're going to get some benefit from that. You're gonna grow to some kind of greatness yourself, right? And you're gonna get a very, very nice position in that company, and that international company that's doing so well and so on, right? So you have to think that if he grew up under the secret care and the wish of the Pharaoh's daughter, who meant him well, because obviously she wanted to do good for him, right? That somehow she would have been pulling strings for him all his life. So he would have grown up to become great in some way, right? And even when you watch well, after reading the story of his life in the Bible, but also watching like the Ten Commandments movie, you see him, being reported as going out to battle and so on. He's coming back and, he's reporting to the Pharaoh and, he looks like a great man, right? So when it says here Moses was grown, it's saying that he accomplished or achieved some things in life. He was someone that you wanted to look at and just be like him. It's like, wow, he a very well-to-do person who's not just well-to-do, but has done well, right? So he found some greatness in life, right? Well-educated man, well-accomplished man. He's got the money he needs. He's living in the or around the palace all the time. He's around the king's courts and the king's presence all the time. Grew up under the secret care of Pharaoh's daughter. This guy's life is well set, so he grew great. So it says when Moses was grown or become great, that he went out. And see, here now is why I say that there was the grown doesn't only mean that he just became an adult, but that there was some greatness accompanied with that, right? And just hang with me. I'm developing the story here, right? If I don't get this all done, there's going to be a part 3, because I'm developing something here to show how life changes. So the greatness here, saying that he was grown, is shown by the next part of the verse or the sentence that says that when he was grown, that he went out, right? That he went out unto his brethren. And when you look at it here, how it says that he went out, it's kind of giving you the sense from the Hebrew that he was going out to do something, right? Now, if it puts it like that, it's trying to let you know that he went out to do something based on the greatness that he had. And I told you already, in some longer recording, when I first started learning Hebrew, my Hebrew teachers telling me that every word is there for a reason, right? Every word is there for a reason in the text. And so when it tells you here, he was grown, Gadal, he became great, it's letting you know that he became great for a reason, because his going out, when it says that he went out unto his brethren, his going out unto his brethren is based on his greatness, which was mentioned right before that. So that he didn't just simply go out to his brethren to just meet his brethren. Like how they put it in the Ten Commandments movie, like, oh, he was in shock when he found out, what, I'm a Hebrew and he didn't tell me this all along? Well, I want to meet my real mother. Where is she? Right? And so it's not just like he's just coming to terms with himself by just finding out that he's a Hebrew and he wants to go out to his brethren to really meet them now, meet the slaves finally, this time with the knowledge of who he is. But it's saying that it's trying to let you know that he went out to his brethren with greatness, or he went out with a purpose that came out of his greatness. His greatness allowed him to think of something that he could do for his brethren, the Hebrews, right? The slaves. So, based on his greatness, he went out because he could now think from a position of greatness after all that he had accomplished and his status in the land, that he could now go out unto his brethren to do something about their plight. He wanted to find a way to change their condition, so he went out to consider their dilemma. Because greatness can now allow him to strategize now, or at least begin to think of how my people's condition can change because of the hard pressure and bondage that they were in. So he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens. Right? And when you take here now the word ra'ah, when it says for look, to say that he looked at his brethren, this again is showing why I say the grown doesn't only mean that he just simply became an adult. He's now a man, no longer a child. But his greatness caused him to look, to go out to his brethren with purpose, to ra'ah, or to look, right? Which means to inspect, to perceive, and to consider. Which means that he is now taking an observation and a watch, looking on his people now to consider, based on his status and his greatness, how he can change something about their condition. So Moses didn't just get up and just kill a man just on the spur of the moment. He went out to look to see how he can stop the oppression of his people. And we know it resulted in him killing the man. But he went out to look to see, how can I stop their suffering? So he went out to strategize, to find a way, to observe, to look, how can this all, be dealt with? All right? And he looked on their burdens and he spied an Egyptian. So again, see, he spied, which means that he is looking on how the Egyptians are treating them, right? He's looking at their condition, but he's also looking at the Egyptians specifically to see what they're doing, because he's intending on doing something that will prevent further actions from the Egyptians that will make the life of the Hebrew slaves, his own people, more difficult. And when he spied this Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren, then he looked this way and that, see, strategizing, right? He looked this way because he went out with a plan already to try to prevent their condition from worsening or from continuing. And now he looks this way and that way because he was grown and he went out with purpose. So now the purpose is beginning to happen. He was looking this way and that way. It wasn't just a casual going out, just want to look at the people and my people. No, I'm going out there to look to see how I can stop it. So he looked this way and that way, strategizing on the moment on how to prevent this Egyptian from doing more damage, possibly even killing another Hebrew. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Right? Went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together, and so on. Those spies that go to verse 14. And he said, here's where things are going to change now. The 2 Hebrews are fighting, right? Moses is like, hey, what's going on here? How can you be fighting your brother? Why are you hitting your own brother, right? Basically saying you're just like the Egyptian, because that's what the Egyptian would do to you, right? Or do to your brother. Then the Hebrew brother said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. Sometimes it's like you're really put in a spot where you've been living your life the way you thought it should be lived, and you've got all kinds of well-to-do ideas. You're not a bum. You don't sit down doing nothing. You go out and work, whatever. Now you found the Most High. You got your family and all that, and you're now returning to the Most High in your heart, and you're keeping the commandments and so on. But on your way to doing what you feel in your heart you should be doing for the Most High and how you should be living before the Most High and so on, sometimes you're feeling like there are just some pressures in life that just keep pushing. And they just won't leave you alone. And no matter how much you try to change, people are just going to push you like against the wall so much, and they're just going to pressure you and keep reminding you, bringing up your past, right? And here's what Moses is dealing with. Moses, he has something to hide because he realized, hey, somebody actually saw me yesterday. I thought nobody saw me, but somebody saw me, right? And on your way back to the Most High, some of your difficulties in life are coming from some of the things that have gone on in your life in the past. And you realize no matter how much you have tried to change in order to now keep the commandments, some things from the past, they still haunt you. Yeah, you put them behind you, you moved on, you whatever, but there's always, sometimes it seems, at least one person reminding you you aren't really that free. If it's not a company holding you back, reminding you that you need to owe, if it's not the government pushing you, if it's not your job, if it's not, it's a person in your own life, it could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be your own spouse, it could be somebody is there to just remind you, yeah, you're trying to live free and look free on the outside, but psychologically, mentally, spiritually, they're trying to hold you to the past. They're saying you're not going to be free to change. You're just not going to move on that easily, right? And that's what he's dealing with there. He's got something to hide. And sometimes it's like we feel like that, like, man, it's like we got something to hide as well. I'm trying to change, trying to do right, trying to move on. But it's like there's always something that just hangs onto my leg. I just can't be free, like a ball and chain. I got to drag this thing. I'm not in the prison anymore, but I'm living like it because I got a ball and chain while I'm walking around in public, living my life. Get in the car, I got to pick up this ball at the end of a chain and drop it on the floor of the driver's seat to drive to work, go about my business like that because I'm not in the prison anymore, but I still got this ball and chain. It's like I'm not imprisoned, but I'm still a prisoner in some sense, a prisoner of my past. And it's difficult sometimes to just break free. The real Moses wasn't always this miracle working Moses. He had to deal with things from his past, even when he wanted to make a change. And notice he didn't just want to make a change in himself, right? Because his life had changed from being stranded as a baby on the water to now becoming greatness in the Pharaoh's presence. But somehow, just this one move in his life was threatening to drag him down from the high pinnacle of greatness to where he would become a fugitive running from the very change he wanted to keep in his life of being free, of handling his life and living his life in greatness, and trying to pass over unto his Hebrew slave brethren the same kind of freedom he felt in his heart, and in their condition he wanted to see them free and released from their bondage. But he could not pass on that release to them if he himself was not released from a ball and chain. Sometimes you can't quite make that difference in people's lives with all those plans you feel you want to put together to do, to reach out to people, to touch people's lives, to do whatever, because you can't even change your own life. You're throwing that ball and chain in the car. When you get back home, you're pulling that ball and chain out of the car just to get back inside the house. The real Moses was living with that ball and chain as well. And that's exactly how you've been living. You think you're free. Now you've returned to the commandments, but there's still a problem to overcome in your life. And somebody is chasing you, even just mentally oppressing you. Somebody in your life is like an oppression. Some kind of situation in your life is like oppressing you, not letting you be free, even though you've turned to the Most High. And you're still wondering, how in the world is my life going to change? This is part 2, the real Moses. I'm going to be bringing part 3.